Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Part 5. We're going from blame to shame. First, I'm going to go over the blame part. Okay, first, I'm going to give what each letter means in the word blame. Belittling, lowering, equal, mutuality. In relationships, and any type of relationship, it's important to have mutuality, which goes along with the E, equal. Equal between both people in that relationship. So, what's one thing that's important within a healthy relationship that could go along with that? Well, that would be being the bigger person. If only one person is the bigger person in that relationship, it's not equal. So I'll use Ken. Have him as my guinea pig. Okay, so when he did things that were intentionally harmful to me and that could be hurtful, like I mentioned, he did not apologize, not one time. For obvious things that, it would be basically like hitting somebody and then just acting and pretending like it didn't happen and not saying anything. Like, I'm really sorry that I did that. It was really wrong of me. So that's where it comes into as to where physical versus emotional. As you can tell, based on my own personal story, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse can be harmful or even more harmful than physical abuse. So, belittling, lowering, equal, mutuality. Mutuality, that means that both people within that relationship give for the other person equally as that person gives to them. So it goes both ways. So, like I stated, he never apologized. Have I ever apologized? Yeah, even for things that I did not do intentionally, that he took the wrong way. Like, you could say things and people may take it the wrong way, even though you absolutely did not mean it that way. And that has actually happened. And like I stated, if I hurt somebody's feelings and I agree with them that, yeah, it could have hurt them, and maybe, he did see it that way, I was open-minded about it because I did have respect for him. And like I stated, he was the first person that I trusted. So I did care about whether or not, if I hurt his feelings or not. And that's where the problem arose, is that I kept on giving. Whenever I upset him, I would immediately apologize for anything I did that would upset him or hurt him. I did the same thing with my abusers many times, where even if I didn't say I'm sorry, I would act like I was the one at fault. Because, like I stated, it's just easier. It was easier because if I didn't do that, they would attack. Now, you noticed when I was going through being the guinea pig myself and showing the story as it went along during the time of the recent bullying incident, I already knew that once I did a little nudge in self-defense, they'd come back and boom. And you had seen that if you had watched throughout the entire time I was being that guinea pig, that every single time that I did self-defense against things that they did to harm me, they went boom, and they stepped it up. That's exactly how my abusers did it to me. If I didn't do one thing, even if it was, following their orders or taking their abuse of belittling me, they'd take it up and step it up a notch. That's exactly what abusers do. So, like I discussed in the last part 4, is that, they considered getting me put into a mental institute as punishment. That was their form of punishment, because their definition of being defiant was me accepting their abuse and tolerating it and just dealing with it like it's not even happening. Because, of course, abusers, they think that their level of importance is up here. Also, it comes to fear versus pride. Like I stated, that somebody had said something about he had a soft spot for me. First, I was like, what the heck? A soft spot. So, he possibly did, care. Maybe, but not enough as to where he had personal integrity to do the right ethical and moral thing in regards to doing what is right. Because he chose to, like I stated, he chose to take the easy route out. Ken chose to take the easy route out because, like I stated, it's not easy being the bigger person. So it comes to that fear of becoming the victim themselves and also losing what they normalize as those healthy relationships that in their mind they believe is something that they need. Once you create a life and you get used to doing it, it's hard to change. It's very hard to change your life and lose the things that you seen as a regular daily life thing. So, especially for people who it's hard for them to make changes, but it all depends on the person. For me, it is hard to make changes, even moving to a new place and whatnot, but it's changes such as that, even with relationships, depending on the person, I should say, it's, difficult. Like with leaving my 3 abusers, the difficult part that I dealt with and still deal with is my father. I miss my dad so much, and it just kills me just to think about it because I miss him so much. And out of the Bullying clan, I guess, of course I miss, the conversations I had with Ken the most because, like I stated, I felt safe and I enjoyed talking to him because he was different from all other people that I've ever spoken to, both females and males. But I also missed Sharon. That's the only 2 people I actually missed out of that bullying cult clan that I was in. Because remember, there was 2 separate ones. John Paul wasn't in the same one as me, and neither was Carla. So, out of the cult clan that I was associated with, that would have been Sharon. Out of the other one, it would have been mainly, Ken, and then Carla. But I still speak to certain people. But anyways, so, yes, making changes and even losing people that were a norm in your life is difficult because you feel that it's a bond. And even if you know deep down inside that it's not healthy, like I stated, I did, realize that the relationship that me and Ken had was not healthy. The reason why I keep using Ken is because that's the relationship that I focused on the most outside of my abusers during the time I was trying to escape, especially, is the one main one that I just focused on the most because I couldn't handle focusing on too many as for what I was dealing with at the time, and also because he did play a significant role within how I came to my realization before I tried to escape. And at the time, like I stated, after I came to that realization, and at the time I was trying to escape, and throughout that entire time, he was not a part of me accomplishing that as being a support to me. He did give his feedback, this and that, but like I stated, that happened right after the last bullying incident, not the recent. And that was when he started to, grow apart and start treating me in bad ways, little by little, until it went all the way down, especially by the last bullying incident. So I know I keep on saying that I wish I never, met him. We'd say that a lot. I wish, I did, cut him off after the last bullying incident before the recent one. But in all honesty, I am glad that I met him and that I did get to my realization part. But also my fear, like I stated, was that he was the main witness, because he was the first person that I opened up to the most about my abuse, which was very hard for me. But, who knows? He may have not been necessary. I really can't say, during the part I was trying to escape. And it might have been, safe for me to, ditch him back then. But you can't always go back, as they say, and think, I should have done that, I should have done this. Because all it's going to do is cause you to continue to blame yourself. Which, again, that's how victims think. And yes, I do blame myself. I do regret things, and I still think part of it's my fault for not taking action. And that's a normal feeling. Even though I know, like I stated, just like abusers know deep down inside what they're doing is wrong, even though I knew deep down inside what I was doing is causing myself even more harm for the future, based upon how he was treating me and kept on going down and down. I knew that that was going to be a big explosion eventually, and I don't know why I did. It just, like I said, it was hard to let go because he was that sentimental part in my life. But at the time, it wasn't as bad as what happened in the recent bullying incident. As to what he had done to me was, like I stated, was the most cruel and despicable thing anybody has ever done to me. And it was extremely hurtful, and it traumatized me. So, yeah, maybe I should have a long time ago. Right after I came to my realization as to the part where he was helpful. And then when he became unhelpful, I should have went. But, hey, we can't turn back time, can we? If we could turn back time. That's right. That's how I feel about my father, too. If only I could turn back time to when, before he became, just like my mother, and just like I felt with Ken, if he could be that, friendly dork from way back then that I first met, But you can't make people change. They are who they are. And like I stated, it's important to be equal within a relationship. And neither one of them, my father nor Ken, have it in them to be the bigger person and have the personal integrity to take responsibility for the actions that they did to harm me or others. That's just how they are. So the next part is going to be shame. I'd like to also give a story based upon the blame part before I get to the shame. So recently, it was kind of interesting how this just happened recently, and how it goes along with, I realized it goes along with what I'm going over now based upon the bullying incident. Okay, so in the shame part, it goes along with the blame. So the blame part, I had mentioned how Ken, in the last bullying incident, he was getting all those PM messages, private messages on Facebook while he was on video chat with me. And he was getting annoyed, because people kept on, texting him, boom, 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 because, he was helping me. God forbid he helped the person that's being attacked and getting done, wrong, because he doesn't want to lose those ties, those great friends, So anyways, so there's this woman that lives in this building, and she's been taking advantage of quite a bit of people that have lived here and still do. And she had gotten to the point where it was one of my friends, and she was making false accusations about him based on possible crimes, which were untrue, and I knew it. So she kept on, coming to me afterwards, and she doesn't have my phone number, but she's been harassing these people in text and calling them, and even going over to certain ones' places in the building, and, making threats, this, that. So I just found out that, she even called the office because she wants me to help her now, because nobody really wants to help her because she's abusive in her behaviors. So I ended up going outside, and she was out there. One of the people that she had been harassing and doing it for years, not giving them money or even borrowing money and not returning it quite a bit. She saw me, she warned me, she's like, oh, she's outside. I was like, oh, I walked right outside. So I was all prepared, and I recorded it. I voice recorded it. I went boop, and then, like I said, I could be a lawyer, and like my cousin stated, I could be for the CIA. So she ended up trying to stop me, and she was talking about my friend and down talking him and asking me if I'll work for her and that she'll give me the money. Well, get this, my friend was working for her, and she ended up giving him a check, and it bounced. Yeah, because she doesn't have any money, and I know that. It's not about the money. Everybody keeps on bringing up it's about the money. Yeah, she does owe people money, and I don't blame them for being mad. But the thing I'm more upset about, and the reason why I stepped in and became the bigger person, is because she's making lies and also false accusations based on crimes that I know these people didn't commit. Now, who did that? Oh, the bullying cult clan. That's right. Even Ken got involved in that. That's how these sickos are. They'll even stoop that low to falsely accuse somebody of a crime such as stalking, sexual harassment, anything like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, those people are really despicable, pathetic people, and who wants to even associate with people like that? I mean, I honestly hate liars. So it wasn't even about the money that she owed me, because she owes me like 150. But you know what? I don't care. It's her making lies. I hate liars. And also, and it really is despicable to me, where it just blows my top, is people that make false accusations based upon things that can actually really harm those people really badly. So that's because my own abusers had done that to me throughout my whole life. So those are the people I despise the most. Oh, don't even get me started there. So I ended up seeing somebody else that became her new glutton for punishment, and I approached him, and I offered to help, because at first he was afraid, and victims are afraid. Like I had stated in another video, it's a lot easier to help the victim than it is to help yourself when you are the victim. And it's very true. I just did it all today. Was it hard work? Yeah, because I had a lot of texts coming in from this person or whoever was being attacked, and then I had an appointment with management, so I had to jump there while I was cleaning and doing my things, and looking through my job applications and so basically it was funny, because it reminded me of Ken when he was getting all those messages coming in, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, because I was getting messages all day. But in his case, he was dealing with as to where he didn't have the pride to be the bigger person, and it was dealing with people who he thinks are good people and are his friends, and he has connection to the cult clan, like I stated. In my case, it did deal with, friends, the ones that were the victims, and the person that was the offender wasn't a friend, So it is harder, especially if the offender is your friend too, and so is the victim. I can understand that, but like I was told by my friend Beth, it doesn't matter. If they have personal integrity, they're going to do what's right no matter who is involved. Otherwise, they don't have personal integrity, and they're not somebody that you could count on to have your back, and even through thick and thin. And that's exactly what that means. So even in cases like that. So that was actually an example that I wanted to give, as for based upon, when you're stuck in that, situation where, both the victim and the, offender are your friends, being able to have good, humane ways and personal integrity means that no matter who is involved, you'll do the right thing. So, that was my day today. It was quite hectic, but it actually did end up successful, and the person that's been doing the offenses has been warned and it's been documented. So, I'm actually glad for those people, because I understand how it feels to be, treated that way, considering, the bullying cult clan, what they had recently done and made those false accusations about me, including in my case, it was much harder because, those people were never friends with that offender. In my case, it happened to be people that I was friends with, and I, certain ones I thought I could trust, especially, like Carla, and mainly Ken, because he was the first person I ever trusted. So yeah, it was a lot harder in that too, as for being the victim, especially when it deals with people that you had certain expectations for and trusted them for that reason. And like I stated, the main thing that I thought Ken would never ever do was exactly what he did in the end, in the recent incident, which is why I'm saying from before that, I wish that I did dump him back then, but things happen, and it did traumatize me. But, like I stated, I'm going to move upwards and keep trying. It's still very hard on me because it's still, I still have, my anxiety about people, and for the first time in my life, it's extremely hard for me to open up. It really is, and it's very hard to explain. I mean, especially if you've never been through it. I remember being that person too, where I didn't really have that issue before, and people would tell me, that they have anxiety around people and opening up. I never realized it until now how that feels, and now that I know, it's not an easy thing, but now, I mean, it's an experience, and at least I can understand when other people are going through it, what it feels like. So that's the way I look at it. It's part of, a good thing, for empathy, to have an understanding, even though I don't know exactly how they're going to feel, but I have an understanding about certain feelings that you would feel and when a traumatic event such as that happens, which was being humiliated and let down by the first person that I ever trusted. So, now, let's get to shame. Okay, abusers will shame the victim as a form of maintaining power and control over their victim or victims. In the last bullying incident, Ken accused me of lying to him because he chose to go along with the cult leader, who of course expected all his clan members to always do as he orders them to do. Ken also implied that I am not mentally well when verbally attacking me in a chat group with me and one other person, Madame de Citrus. Abusers often use discrimination against special needs as a form of abuse. Many people use special needs in ways that are made-up insults that are actually not factual. Having a mental illness doesn't make one incapable of socially functioning in a humane manner. Ken used the same abuse technique that my 3 abusers used on me since I was a young child. That's absolutely true. People always put down, others as for insults or to demean them, saying that, oh, they're mentally ill, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what they did mainly in that bullying cult clan. But like I showed, quite a bit of them are, have their own mental illness, yet they're over there putting down others, even putting down, people who are, suicidal, when I had shown that one of them is also suicidal at times. So that was to show how even people who have that certain special need will use it against others easily. They're the ones that are, choosing to be assholes. And those are people that I totally look down upon, because that's one thing I'm strong about, is discrimination against special needs. So that is a huge problem, because just like the word retard, people made that up themselves. That was actually meant for people who have what is now called intellectual disabilities, because they changed it, because people who actually have that special need, it's degrading them when other people use that word to insult others. And that's exactly what mental illness, people are using that as a way to degrade all people who don't even have a mental illness. It's just a way of being a despicable, cruel person, is what it is. One of these days they're going to end up having to change mental illness to another term, because people who have that special need know, it's insulting to them. Even though, like I explained and proved, is that, heck, we all have mental illnesses. Look at that bullying cult clan. What I just stated, what they do. They're more pathetic, and like I just stated, just because you have a mental illness doesn't make you not able to be social. My 3 abusers throughout my whole life, even when I was a young child, heck, they try to get me with autism and this and that, oh, she has that and that and that, all that BS, because they use lies too, and that was their way of trying to keep control over me and all that. Instead of, being what they, you think parents are, that you just, because they're that higher up, they always have the best interests. Instead of raising me to go upwards and have a, good self-esteem and confidence, self-confidence, and all that, and self-love, it went out the window. And that's exactly, what emotional abuse can do. And that's, verbal or psychological, that's exactly what those bullying cult clans do too. It's abusive. As a victim of verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse, victims will often believe that they are not worthy of having a relationship that benefits them in positive ways. In the last bullying incident, I not only felt helpless, but I also blamed and shamed myself, because I felt guilty that Ken had stressed out by that whole incident. During the time that Ken was helping me, I felt as though it was a miracle that I was getting what I never believed I deserved to have, which at the time was respect within a relationship. Well, as what I thought was respect. Because during the time that he was helping me, he was also in a hate group. So, it's really hard to separate the two. I'm not going to lie, I know that makes him not a good person, because he was in a hate group while pretending to be a caring person and friend, but that is sentimental to me still, because that's the part where I came to my realization and how he helped me. So I honestly think that it's okay that I still hold that sentimental and appreciate that he did that for me, while realizing the bad that he did too, and why he wasn't a good friend. So separating the two is okay too, like I had discussed in the part 4, as for separating the two. Realizing the bad that they did, but also valuing and missing what they did good. So bad and good. If you could separate the two and realize that and keep self-protection, hey, you're in good, thoughts, and you're not delusional as to thinking, that this person's a good person. Like I stated, that denial doesn't always mean that the victim doesn't realize that they're not a good person. It could also be the shame of it, to having to even admit that you were in another, or even your first toxic relationship. Just admitting to it is embarrassing and humiliating and shameful. It still is right now for me to even say that I was in a toxic relationship during the time I was trying to escape another one. So yes, it was very hard for me to admit that, and that was another reason why I kind of held on to that relationship, because the people that knew that I still, was talking to him, they'd obviously question. And I mean, honestly, I was nervous about, just like I stated, I was nervous about people even reading my story, seeing what he did based upon the story itself, that they'd be judging me like, God, she's so dumb for staying friends with him. And, believe me, I felt dumb enough myself that I did that, and just was like a mat, like I stated. But it bring me to who I am now, and I'm not a mat anymore. As people, they say, God, you're so sweet, and, like I stated, if they knew the old me, they would not be saying that. Believe me. The person I had thought I knew at the time was real. It didn't seem to be pulling any ropes of deceit and betrayal. The person who I thought I knew was empathetic by understanding why I felt the way I did, and also why I had negative patterns of staying in unhealthy relationships. That's very true. That's one thing that Ken did help me with, is understanding what unhealthy relationships are and what I actually deserve. He was very good at giving advice. I'll give him that. He was very good at that. The way he gave me advice was in ways that made me really think. I mean, he's just great with words. I have to give him credit for that. I mean, it's exactly how people in the mental health field should speak to their clients, the way that he does. And that's why I made a mental health therapy based upon my experience with Ken, because the way he does words is incredible. I've not even with mental health professionals have I been given that type of feedback as to where it really made me think and learn from it too. I mean, that was just one thing he was amazing at. The person who I thought I knew made me feel safe for the first time in my life. This was because he was doing what I never thought anyone would ever do for me, which was defending me against those who were trying to harm me. The person who I thought I knew did have personal integrity, because they were defending me against other known clan members that I knew myself could end up attacking him if the cult leader found out. I also didn't expect Ken to stand by my side, even if he knew I was being harmed and didn't deserve it. This is because I always expected others to do what is the easiest and least stressful thing to do for themselves, even if they knew it was wrong and would hurt me in the end. I also expected Ken to end our friendship because being friends with me would cause him stress, due to the fact that I am the enemy of the cult clans. I didn't think I deserved someone that would defend me and stay by my side, even when I am the innocent person who is getting harmed by others. Just like the bullying incidents before the last incident, I never expected the other clan members to stand up for me and stay by my side when others were trying to harm me. My personal belief of what personal integrity in a respectful relationship was, in fact, a very negatively distorted definition that often led me to having many unhealthy relationships. In my relationship with Ken, I made many excuses and exceptions for him not doing what is the ethical thing to do, no matter who is involved. My excuses were that Ken has his own personal problems to deal with, and would be selfish of me to expect him to go out of his way to do things that could cause him any more stress. My exceptions for Ken was that he is still a good friend as long as he stood by my side when he wasn't being attacked by the Cult Clan members during any cycle of abuse that was happening to me. Meaning I expected him to stop defending me when the cult leader stepped in and threatened Ken based upon being friends with me. I also expected him to disappear without a word or care as for how I felt about it. Based upon how my abusers raised me, I was taught that a man will always do what only pleases their wife. My own father believes in this dangerous cultural social belief that often leads to many innocent people getting harmed. I ended up being the innocent person who is continuously harmed by the ones most people in our society believe are the ones that you should always be able to trust the most. My own father, from the very start of my life, watched my mother and sister abuse me. My father did try to intervene and help me, but he always ended up taking sides with my mother due to not having the personal integrity to not only do what is right for me, but what is actually right for him too. Just like Ken chose to end our friendship to stay friends with those who actually used him as their main tool to destroy me, is exactly what my father is for both my mother and sister. This is exactly the same for how one personally sees the cult clan leader. Everyone in those cult clans always did what the cult clan leader ordered them to do, even if it meant harming someone who they know is innocent and doesn't deserve to have that happen to them. During the time that Ken was the person I thought I knew, I thought that our relationship was equal. Ken felt real because I wasn't aware that he was in a hate group degrading me and plotting against me the entire time during the last bullying incident, which is actually what is one of the largest pills that I have to swallow, because I feel stupid for actually believing that Ken would never do anything so despicable to intentionally harm me. Just like the most painful part is realizing that my father was and never was real to me in my relationship with him. If my father was real, he wouldn't have chosen to join in on the abuse plots that my mother and sister did to me throughout my entire life. If my father was real, he would have protected me and removed me from the abuse when I was still a young child. But he chose to stay with my mother, the cult clan leader, over me. My feelings of respect for Ken was real, like they were for my father. I would never do anything to intentionally harm my father or Ken, because at the time, I thought they were the people I delusionally believed were good, humane people who cared about my personal well-being equally to theirs within the relationship I had at that time with them. I was devastated to have to realize and accept that I foolishly believed that my father and Ken were people who I could count on to respect me as I respected them. The difference between my father and Ken as for how that relationship negatively affected me in the end is that I never expected Ken to not have the personal integrity to eventually take responsibility for choosing to engage in obvious abuse that harmed me. because I had higher expectations of Ken is the reason why that relationship caused me more mental anguish at the end of that relationship. As for my father, I did always expect him to put not only my mother above me, but also choose to do what will be the easiest route for himself in the choices he made that would also affect my personal well-being. As it turns out, neither one of those two relationships were ever equal. And that's very true. It's very shameful to me to even have to admit that I was in those relationships and thinking that they were good. And it's actually embarrassing. And that was, especially during the time I was trying to escape, but I stated that the hardest thing I was dealing with was, in fact, Ken, is because I was extremely ashamed that I was in another toxic relationship during the time I was trying to get out of a really bad one that I already felt ashamed of, that I stayed in for as long as I did. And it's just very hard to talk about. So, anyways, okay. Yes, okay, that it is very shameful, and that goes along with blame, because blaming the victim is exactly, it's very a common pattern of abusers to do. They'll blame the victim, and that's why emotional, verbal, psychological, mental abuse can damage somebody even more than physical abuse, because the victim tries to self-protect, and especially in my case where I was conditioned to just take the blame and never expect an apology, I ended up having multiple toxic relationships throughout my life. And I look back now and I'm ashamed of that too. But like I stated, the one that caused me the most shame and, mental anguish was the first person that I trusted, and also the shame of it. As for people even thinking that, and knowing that people were most likely thinking that during the time I was trying to escape, believe me, it was a lot harder on myself and feeling ashamed at myself than it was just people knowing that I stayed in that toxic relationship. It was a hard pill for me too, to accept that I did that. So the blame part goes into the shame part, because we end up blaming ourselves as victims as for why the incident happened, when in actuality it's the offender who caused those bad things to happen, and that they are the ones, like I stated, which is a huge problem, they are the ones to be focused on to make changes in their behaviors. And for self-love, that doesn't mean that you should be open to forgiveness and just letting it go as though it didn't happen, and being a mat and just keep going back, which I say is a huge problem too. As for cultural and social beliefs, it's about self-love and realizing that you are important and you deserve respect, and what each letter means, as in blame, belittling, lowering, equal, mutuality. So when it comes to blame and people are blaming you for things that you shouldn't be blamed for, just remember that they're belittling you and they're lowering your equalness as for mutuality in that relationship, and that makes them the bad person and the one that's toxic within that relationship. And like I said, we all deserve to be respected and have healthy relationships. And if somebody isn't willing to do that, then they don't deserve to have you in their life. So next part is going to be part 6, and that's going to be communication. So, I hope to see you for part 6. I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. See you next time.